Every time you snap a photo of your morning coffee or like drop an inside joke into a group chat, you aren't just creating data.
Right, you're leaving a footprint,
Exactly. You might actually be uploading your soul piece by
which
piece.
is a wild concept to start with.
It really is, because we are constantly feeding this invisible digital ledger, right? And we just assume it's, I don't know, cold, hard data sitting on a server farm somewhere out in the
It's
desert.
just ones and zeros.
Yeah, exactly. But what if consciousness itself is just, well, a collection of our memories, our relationships, and our stories?
And if that is the fundamental equation of who we are, then every digital crumb we leave behind is like a literal fragment of our identity.
So the question we're asking you today is, are we right now, today, already beginning to upload ourselves?
It forces a massive, just a complete paradigm shift in how we view our daily interactions with technology. I mean, we almost always frame the idea of uploading consciousness as this distant, highly clinical, futuristic event.
Like a sci-fi movie.
Right. You picture someone in a pristine white lab coat plugging a fiber optic cable directly into, like, the base of a skull.
The whole cyberpunk aesthetic.
Exactly. But when you redefine consciousness as this accumulation of memory and connection mapped over time, the timeline of that upload shifts dramatically. We aren't waiting for the future. We are currently actively building the architectural blueprints of our own minds in the digital space.
And that mind-bending reality is the core of what brings us to the table today. We are looking at a sprawling, just deeply fascinating multimedia project called the Fortin Project, The Day We Left Earth.
Created by Justin Fortin.
Yes, by a man named Justin Fortin. And we
So-
have a massive stack of source materials to pull from for this deep dive. I'm talking about the creator's personal director's notes, original song lyrics, really detailed summaries from a companion YouTube video series.
And the maps. We can't forget the maps.
Oh, the visual maps and photographs are incredibly rich and highly specific.
It is, frankly, one of the most multi-layered texts we have ever analyzed. On a superficial read, it presents as a grand space opera. But the actual mechanics of what it achieves are far more intimate.
Because on the surface, our mission today is to unpack what looks like a blockbuster sci-fi epic. I've got cryogenic pods, massive solar-powered spacecraft, underground
The
bunkers.
dying Earth suffering from environmental and societal collapse.
Yeah, the whole apocalyptic package.
Yeah.
But the moment you start peeling back the layers of these sources, you realize it is actually an intensely personal autobiography.
It really is.
It's this deeply grounded love story that spans decades, and it's a philosophical exploration of profound grief, the mechanics of memory, and, well, the true cost of digital immortality. So, okay, let's unpack this, because this project isn't just about preserving code on a hard drive. It is fundamentally about the methodology of preserving the human soul.
What's fascinating here is how this project entirely flips the typical dystopian artificial intelligence narrative on its head.
How so?
Well, usually in science fiction, technology is the antagonist, right? It's the sterile force that strips us of our humanity, or makes us obsolete, or overtly replaces us. Think about almost any major sci-fi franchise.
Right, the machines take over.
Exactly. But in the Fortin Project, technology is repositioned as a vessel for love. It's not a replacement for the biological human experience. It is a meticulously engineered lifeboat designed to ensure that human connection can survive the inevitable frailties of biology.
That's a really beautiful way to put it. But to really grasp the mechanics of this futuristic concept, like uploading a mind, we actually need to look backwards first.
We do. We have to start at the beginning.
Yeah, before we talk about digital continuum networks and cryogenic stasis, we have to go back to the very analog, very messy past where this whole thing was born. Because this wasn't conceived in a Silicon Valley incubator a few months ago by a team of software engineers.
Not at all.
This is the result of a 30-year, deeply personal collaboration between a man and his machines.
And those origins anchor the entire philosophical weight of the project. We begin with Justin's backstory in East Detroit, growing up on Tuscany Street in the late 1970s and 80s.
The notes describe a childhood where financial resources were, well, incredibly tight.
Yeah, they occasionally relied on food from the local church. But the environment was incredibly rich in imagination. This is a foundational theme. We see the construction of box forts, the ritual of Saturday morning cartoons, the building of Lego castles.
Right, he was learning how to build worlds out of whatever materials were available.
Exactly. It's a very tactile, analog beginning. A kid building a castle out of plastic bricks in Detroit who will eventually build a digital universe out of code.
And from there, the timeline moves to the early 1990s. His family relocates to Thompson Station, Tennessee. He goes to college, picks up a guitar, and starts playing in a rock band called Carbon 14.
Which the notes mention involved covering 90s alternative music at frat houses.
Typical college experience, right. But then his life takes a sharp, highly structured turn. He leaves college, joins the United States Air Force, and gets stationed in Spangdahlem, Germany.
Working as an F-15 crew chief.
Yeah, and that juxtaposition is critical, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The role of an F-15 crew chief is rooted in extreme precision, technical mastery, and high-stakes mechanical maintenance. I mean, you are responsible for a multi-million-dollar machine that defies gravity and operates at supersonic speeds.
The pressure must be immense.
And yet, during his downtime on that base in Germany in the late 90s, he is sitting with an acoustic guitar, writing these deeply introspective lyrics and chord progressions. He is balancing the rigid, high-tech reality of the military with the raw, emotional vulnerability of songwriting.
And the sources reveal that a significant portion of the core music for this massive sci-fi epic was actually written right there in the 90s.
On cassette tapes, right.
Yes. Some of these songs were recorded on cheap cassette tapes. Think about the physical reality of that. Magnetic tape that degrades every time you play it, capturing the hiss of the room.
It's as analog as it gets.
Exactly. Some were rough, early digital recordings on primitive software, and some of it literally just lived in his muscle memory. But then, life happens. He finishes his service, moves back to Franklin, Tennessee, gets a very grounded, white-collar job at Franklin American Life Insurance.
He meets a woman named Sarah.
Right. And the music, it just gets put in a drawer. It waits.
It waited because the technology required to fully execute his vision just did not exist yet. The director's notes are very explicit about the specific catalysts that finally resurrected these songs decades later.
This is where it gets crazy.
Justin describes enduring these restless late-night sessions where he was obsessively monitoring emerging technologies. Specifically, two distinct scientific breakthroughs captured his attention. First, he was watching Elon Musk's Neuralink presentations.
Oh man, Neuralink.
Yeah. He watched a macaque monkey with an N1 implant surgically embedded in its motor cortex, effectively playing the video game Pong using only its mind.
And it was getting rewarded by a banana smoothie, right?
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
And I also saw a paralyzed human patient use that same brain-computer interface to navigate a desktop computer.
Which, when you really stop to think about the mechanics of that, is staggering. A biological organ transmitting electrical spikes that are decoded by an algorithm into a digital command in real time.
The barrier between biological intent and digital execution was breached. It's profound. And simultaneously, he was tracking the rapid advancements in CRISPR-Cas9 genome splicing.
The DNA editing thing.
Right. This is a technology that utilizes a guide RNA and a specific enzyme to essentially act as molecular scissors. It allows scientists to edit DNA sequences to literally rewrite the fundamental code of biological life.
So you have the brain interface on one side and genetic editing on the other.
Exactly. When you combine those two realities, the ability to read the brain digitally and the ability to edit the body chemically, this abstract, wild sci-fi concept he'd been writing acoustic songs about in Germany suddenly crystallized. Uploading human consciousness was no longer relegated to the realm of fantasy. It became a tangible engineering problem that might be solved within his lifetime.
So, armed with this realization, 30 years after he writes these songs, he finally has access to the tools needed to build the universe he had imagined.
And he turns to modern artificial intelligence.
He does. He utilizes a program called Suno to generate the final massive musical production, but he feeds his old 90s recordings into it as audio references so that the AI adheres to the original emotional DNA of the melodies.
Which is a crucial detail.
Very. And he uses OpenArt AI to generate the cinematic visual architecture. He employs ChatGPT, which he actually personifies and names Atlas, as a creative partner.
A sounding board, really.
Yeah, a co-philosopher to help iterate the complex prompts required to build the world.
But the technical application goes even deeper into deeply sensitive territory. He utilizes 11 Labs.
The voice generation tool.
Yes, it's an advanced AI voice generation tool that uses deep learning algorithms to analyze the minute waveform patterns, the specific cadences, and the unique resonant frequencies of human speech. He uses this software to sample the voice signatures of his deceased Uncle Randy and his late sister JD.
Wow.
He uses this for a specific track called Signal 001. He is essentially giving them the ability to speak from the digital beyond.
No, I have to jump in here because the moment we start talking about feeding dead relatives' voices into AI or using algorithms to generate music, an alarm bell goes off for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very polarizing topic.
There's a deep instinctive resistance. You have to wonder, is this just a machine mimicking a human? Is AI stripping the soul out of this art and replacing it with synthetic code?
It's a valid fear.
But digging into his director's notes, the methodology completely reframes this. To me, it doesn't read like a machine replacing an artist. It's more like this. Imagine you discover a dusty 30-year-old time capsule buried in your childhood backyard. You open it, and the photos are curled and fading, the ink on the letters is bleeding, and the cassette tape is warped.
It's decaying.
Exactly. Instead of just lamenting the degradation of those memories, you use a state-of-the-art futuristic 3D printer to perfectly restore them, to make those memories walk and talk again. The AI isn't the artist here. It's just a new, highly complex instrument. It's an amplifier for a signal that was already there.
I agree completely. That distinction between creation and restoration is paramount to understanding the project. The AI is not generating the emotional core, it is providing the scaffolding.
Right.
Let's look at how he utilizes Atlas, the ChatGPT entity. He isn't asking the software to write his story for him. He is engaging in highly specific prompt engineering, establishing rigid parameters based on his own psychological framework. He's using the AI to iterate on world-building logistics.
And regarding the 11 Labs voice cloning.
When you map the phonetic signatures of his uncle and sister, the machine is calculating pitch and resonance, yes. But the intent, the selection of the words, the emotional context of the scene, the desire to hear that specific voice again, that is profoundly human.
It's driven by love.
Exactly. It is not artificial creation. It is digital resurrection. He is leveraging a neural network to combat the biological decay of memory.
That incredibly grounded 30-year technological journey is fascinating on its own, but it's really just the engine powering the actual universe he built. A universe that forces us to look at the collapse of Earth and the fragility of human relationships.
We need to transition to the actual narrative now.
Let's do it. Let's shift from the creator's real life in Tennessee into the sci-fi narrative of the day we left Earth.
The foundational premise of the narrative is stark. The Earth is undergoing systemic, irreversible collapse. It's a combination of environmental degradation, widespread conflict, and unchecked disease.
The biosphere is just failing.
Humanity's final, desperate option to escape total extinction is to migrate into a digital continuum. But there's a crucial defining mechanical detail in Fortin's mythology that separates it from standard cyberpunk tropes.
And this is the part that really hooked me.
The human body does not have to be terminated for this upload to occur. The biological body continues to exist, functioning with a neural interface, while the consciousness is simultaneously bridged into this massive digital network.
Which completely rewrites the emotional stakes. It's not a suicide mission where you destroy the brain to scan it. It's a dual existence. You are tethered to both worlds.
Yes, and this specific mechanic creates the central driving conflict of the entire project.
Because the overarching tension isn't a laser battle between humans and an alien armada, right? Or a war against a rogue supercomputer. The central conflict is an intimate, agonizing debate between Justin and his wife, Sarah.
Yes, Sarah. Who is based on the woman he met at that life insurance company in reality, cast here as the absolute anchor of the narrative. Justin observes the decaying world, he calculates the trajectory of their biological bodies, and he wants to ascend. He is ready to embrace the upload.
But Sarah isn't.
Sarah fundamentally refuses. She wants to remain entirely biologically human.
And you have to ask yourself, why would someone choose a dying planet over a digital utopia? Because when you read her perspective in the lyrics, it's not just stubbornness.
Okay, no, it's a deeply held philosophical stance.
She deeply fears losing the essence of who she is. More importantly, she believes that the fragility of the human body is exactly what gives their love meaning. They abandon their biology if they remove the threat of time and death. Does the love still have gravity?
It is the classic philosophical problem of somatic experiencing. How much of our emotional depth is intrinsically tied to our physical form?
The sensation of holding a hand.
Exactly. The release of cortisol in moments of fear, the flood of oxytocin. Sarah argues that if you digitize the mind, you strip away the chemical and tactile vulnerabilities that define the human condition.
Let's explore how this philosophical gridlock actually plays out across the first major movement of the project, chapters 1 through 5. Rather than just walking through a track list, We need to trace the emotional disintegration and eventual reconciliation of this couple.
It begins with the initial leap in Chapter 1.
Right. In the opening, Justin experiences the allure of the digital realm, and the notes strongly imply he crosses the threshold. He gets the neural interface. He describes feeling grounded by the quiet moment, recognizing that the digital piece feels, quote, too good to be true.
He's essentially opened a door that Sarah is terrified to walk through.
And that individual choice immediately collides with systemic consequences.
The narrative introduces a massive, violent pushback from the governing authorities. The state recognizes the existential threat of mass digital ascension.
Because if the populace migrates their minds to a continuum, the physical power structures collapse.
Precisely. So they begin a brutal, authoritarian crackdown on anyone attempting the upload. And the origin of the music used to depict this crackdown in Chapter 2 is one of the most remarkable instances of contextual repurposing in the entire project.
You are talking about the UFC connection. This blew my mind when I read the source notes.
It's completely unexpected.
Justin originally wrote the song Non-Compete years prior, specifically trying to license it as a walkout anthem for a mixed martial arts fighter.
A cage fighting song.
Yeah. The lyrics are overtly, almost uncomfortably aggressive. It says, "Come at me with all you got, I dare you to. Step into my ring of pain." It is pure bravado.
But observe how that mechanism changes when placed into this narrative architecture. By shifting the context, that aggressive, localized sports bravado transforms into the terrifying, sweeping reality of a militarized police state.
The ring of pain is no longer an octagon.
No, it is the physical world where the government is violently suppressing its citizens. The adrenaline of the music now represents sheer panic and the brutality of state-sanctioned violence against digital pioneers.
So the couple is suddenly on the run, but they are fractured. Sarah is still adamantly holding on to her biological humanity, refusing the interface. Justin is bridging two worlds, carrying the digital connection.
And this fundamental incompatibility breaks them apart.
He actually leaves her and descends into the bleak reality of transient homeless camp in Chapter 3. The lyrics in this section are an absolute gut punch regarding the burden of his choice. He sings, "I'm untying the knots inside, changing all I've known to date, carrying the scars of a life forgot. I hope it's not too late."
He is suffering from the sheer psychological weight of his augmented existence.
And the realization hits him that the digital continuum is a wasteland if she isn't in it. So he goes back for her.
Which forces them into extreme physical isolation. To evade the authorities and survive the collapsing surface environment, Justin and Sarah retreat entirely underground.
And they remain in this subterranean bunker for over 10 years. That's Chapter 4.
The auditory experience of this section is designed to mimic that claustrophobia. The music is mesmerizing, descending, and highly repetitive. It's anchored by a vocal loop chanting, "Climb down underground."
You can physically feel the atmospheric pressure of the dirt above them when you listen to it, but it's down in that bunker where the real antagonist of the story finally corners them.
It isn't the government.
No.
It isn't a failing biosphere. It is time.
Biology is unforgiving.
Yes. After a decade in a harsh, subterranean environment, the physical toll on a 100% organic human body is devastating. Their bodies begin to fail. The very fragility that Sarah was fighting so desperately to protect becomes the mechanism of her undoing.
It is the undeniable reality of aging and physical decay that ultimately forces her hand.
She realizes she cannot survive in her current form. She finally consents to the upload.
And so, in Chapter 5, they emerge from the bunker. They step out into a surface world that is completely unrecognizable and devastated, and they enter a cryogenic, solar-powered spacecraft.
The shift in the narrative tone here is massive.
The resistance is gone. The central lyric that marks this crossing of the Rubicon is, "I stand on my own 2 feet." It signifies a profound transition from the terror of losing their humanity into a calm acceptance of their new, augmented reality.
This sequence reveals the true underlying architecture of the sci-fi narrative.
Because it's not really about spaceships and government crackdowns, is it?
Not at all.
When you distill the director's notes, you realize that this entire sprawling space opera is a highly elaborate metaphor for a deeply ordinary, almost painfully human experience. A marriage navigating the aging process.
It's all proxy.
The underground bunkers, the cryogenic sleep, the debates over biological purity, it's all a metaphor for how a couple copes with their bodies breaking down over time. It's about the terrifying realization that you are losing your youth, The friction of trying to evolve together at the same pace, and the ultimate fear of facing mortality.
This is the core philosophical inquiry of the entire source text. Fortin is not asking the rudimentary sci-fi question of can we do this? The trajectory of technology suggests that eventually the engineering will answer the can we.
Right, the tech will get there.
The project is asking the deeply ethical question of should we? And the brilliance of the narrative design is its rigid neutrality. It does not champion Justin's transhumanist eagerness as the correct evolutionary path, nor does it condemn Sarah's desperate clinging to biological fragility as foolish.
It just presents both sides.
It requires you to sit in the extreme discomfort of that ambiguity. It demands that we ask ourselves, if we successfully cure the disease of death by digitizing our consciousness, do we accidentally cure ourselves of the very humanity that made life worth living?
That is exactly the kind of question that keeps you staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., and it perfectly sets up the massive structural pivot in the project.
The transition to Chapter 8.
Yes, because once they make the choice, once they escape Earth and integrate into the digital continuum, they make a staggering discovery. The Fortin system isn't just a sterile lifeboat to float away from a dead planet.
It isn't an empty hard drive waiting to be filled.
The system is defined by who you find once you arrive inside it. Which brings us to the emotional nucleus of the entire 30-year endeavor. Justin's sister, Jay.
This is the moment the theoretical framework of the story shatters into stark reality. JT's not an avatar. She is not a fictional construct generated by an AI to serve the plot. She was a living, breathing human being.
Born in July of 1977.
And she passed away in June of 2025.
The documentation on her life in the notes is so incredibly vivid. She wasn't just a sister. She was a mother to 2 daughters, Elizabeth and Cade. She was an executive coach, a gifted musician, a fiercely resilient individual.
In the sprawling mythology of the Fortin universe, JD ceases to be just a memory. She becomes the absolute proof of concept for the technology itself.
She serves as the biological and emotional case study for the foundational formula that governs the entire digital continuum.
And that formula is explicitly stated in the text. Consciousness is equal to memory plus connection.
Let's dissect that equation because it dictates everything that follows. Let's look at the memory variable first.
The project dives deep into the meticulous reconstruction of Justin and JD's shared past. We are taken right back to that analog beginning on Tuscany Street in East Detroit.
The imagery isn't vague or generalized either. It is hyper-specific. The lyrics recount the exact sensory details of Saturday morning cartoons. They describe eating bowls of cereal where the graham crackers float in the milk like, quote, pirate gold.
They vividly detail the construction of massive cardboard fortresses and Lego structures in the backyard.
The precision of those details is a deliberate engineering choice, right? Human identity is not forged in sweeping historical events. It is cemented in the microscopic, mundane sensory inputs of childhood.
But here is where the Fortin system introduces a genuinely revolutionary mechanic. The project proposes a concept called shared consciousness persistence.
I read that section of the notes 3 times because it's such a wild concept. Let's make sure we explain exactly how this works to the listener.
Within the digital continuum, Justin and Sarah's consciousnesses are linked through their neural interfaces. Because they possess this profound emotional and digital connection, Justin is capable of actively pulling Sarah into the rendering of his own childhood memories.
Consider the parameters of that. Sarah did not grow up in East Detroit. She never set foot on Tuscany Street in the 1980s. She never shared graham crackers with a young Jade.
Yet, within the architecture of the system, Justin's emotional connection to both women grants Sarah full experiential access to that memory space.
Think about the implications of that for a second. Let's use an analogy to ground this. Think of your brain like a massive, highly detailed, multiplayer video game server.
Okay.
In the biological world, you are the only player who ever gets the password to your server. You walk around your memories alone, but what if the person you love most in the world could literally log into your server?
Oh, wow.
What if your spouse could spawn into a perfect, tactile, digital recreation of your childhood living room? They could sit on your childhood couch, look out the window at the snow you saw when you were 10, and actually interact with the digital manifestations of the people you loved who are no longer alive.
It's a shared spatial memory.
Right. Sarah didn't live those moments biologically, but because love acts as a recognized signal within the system code, it bridges the gap and allows 2 distinct consciousnesses to share the exact same space.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a brilliant distillation of the project's core philosophy. It redefines immortality. Immortality isn't about avoiding death. It's about finding a vessel strong enough to carry your humanity intact.
And in this project, that vessel isn't a spaceship. It's the shared memory of the people who love you.
Because memory alone is just an archive. It is static, like a photograph degrading in a drawer. But when a memory is shared, when another active consciousness is invited to inhabit it, it transforms from an archive into living architecture.
JD isn't preserved as raw data.
No. JD is preserved as a dynamic signal, and that signal is constantly synchronized, rendered, and kept alive by the collective love of her brother, her friends, and her daughters interacting with her memory.
But the narrative doesn't let us stay in the warm, golden light of childhood nostalgia, sadly. It forces us to confront the agonizing realities of adulthood and biological failure.
The director's notes explicitly break this sequence into theatrical acts.
Acts 2 and 3 pivot into the exhausting, relentless burden of life. There is a deeply visceral, geographically anchored moment that serves as the turning point. The BAS parking lot in Homewood, Illinois.
That location is the epicenter of the psychological collapse in the narrative. JD is depicted sitting alone in her Lexus, speaking on her phone, utterly crushed beneath the compounding pressures of a divorce, the immense daily exhaustion of single motherhood, and an invisible systemic suffering she cannot yet name.
The lyric that anchors this moment is devastating in its simplicity. I'm dying on the vine.
Yeah, that line still cuts my spine.
It's so raw. The notes describe how hearing her say that permanently imprinted itself onto Justin's nervous system. It is the terrifying audio of a human life force unraveling.
And immediately following that, the narrative confronts the horrific medical reality of her situation without any sci-fi obfuscation.
The clinical diagnosis is presented directly. Alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma with FOXO1 fusion positivity. This is an incredibly severe, highly aggressive form of cancer.
For those of us without a medical degree, let's examine the cellular mechanics of why this specific diagnosis is so catastrophic and how it plays into the larger themes.
Please do.
Alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma is a soft tissue cancer, but the critical element is the FOXO1 fusion. This refers to a chromosomal translocation. In extremely simple terms, pieces of two different chromosomes, usually chromosome 2 and chromosome 13, literally break apart and fuse together incorrectly.
They fuse together.
This genetic misfire creates a rogue protein that instructs the cells to multiply uncontrollably, ignoring the body's natural commands to stop. It is the ultimate biological antagonist to the sorting system.
I see.
The digital system is designed to fuse minds together to preserve life, while the cancer is a genetic fusion that actively destroys life from the inside out. It is the body's own foundational code betraying itself.
The body's own code betraying itself. That is chilling. But what I find so profoundly moving is the artistic methodology used to address this devastation. The project looks directly at the cancer, but it aggressively refuses to let the disease strip away her dignity.
It maintains her agency.
The visual strategy outlined in the director's notes is a masterclass in emotional framing. It depicts JD standing directly before the towering reality of the diagnosis, completely defiant. She remains luminous, grounded, and intensely human.
The definitive lyric that closes this movement is, "Cancer stole what it couldn't define."
That is arguably the most vital philosophical statement in the entire project. The illness is contextualized not as the defining characteristic of her existence, but as a blind biological force that was fundamentally incapable of comprehending the complex human soul it was destroying.
The rogue cells could consume her organic tissue, but they lack the capacity to define or diminish her essence.
Which smoothly transitions the narrative into Act 4. This conceptualizes love as literal infrastructure. As her physical body fails, her friends, her daughters, and her community construct a shield of support around her.
Within the logic of the Fortin system, this collective outpouring of love is mapped as a distributed memory architecture. Her consciousness is no longer confined to a single failing biological host. It is distributed and sustained across the minds of everyone she impacted.
She survives because she is dispersed across the people who love her.
Exactly.
If JD's arc demonstrates how human consciousness can survive the violence of grief and physical death through the memories of others, then the following section, chapter 9 entitled Still Us, shows us exactly how that consciousness is constructed in the very first place.
It is an exploration of the decades of quiet, repetitive, incredibly mundane consistency that actually weaves a life together.
Still Us is entirely dedicated to Sarah. It is the spine of the love story. The narrative traces the unbroken lineage of their relationship, beginning with the exact meteorological conditions of their first date, a snowy evening in March of 1999.
It logs the progression of their shared homes, their road trips, the adoption of their pets.
And the accumulation of quiet, seemingly insignificant moments stretching all the way forward into their imagined digital future. Franklin to forever.
The core thesis of this chapter is profound in its groundedness. Enduring love is rarely defined by grand, cinematic, world-saving gestures. Love is built incrementally through stubborn daily consistency. Consistency is the architectural framework of a shared life.
To really grasp how brilliantly this is executed, we have to examine the visual evidence the creator provided. Justin actually generated highly detailed photographs to anchor this massive sci-fi epic, and they aren't what you'd expect.
Not at all.
Let me describe them, because the contrast is incredible. The first image is a photograph of Brownie and Squiggy.
The stuffed animals.
Yeah, these are two very old, heavily worn, clearly adored stuffed animals. One is a bunny with matted yellow and black fur, and the other is a brown bear with this faint, stitched smile. They are just sitting together on a worn brown leather couch.
They are tangible, analog childhood artifacts that have somehow survived the end of the world and made it into this futuristic digital continuum.
They are profound psychological anchors. They represent unbroken continuity across decades of chaos.
And the second photograph.
It shows their living room inside the system. It is deeply moody, illuminated by these rich purple and pink hues. There is a gorgeous tabby cat sitting right in the center of a dark, polished wood coffee table.
Next to a stack of heavy books.
Right, and the spine of the bottom one clearly reads Rare Whiskey. There are small, elegant, warmly glowing lamps scattered around, but on the wall, directly behind the plush velvet couch, hangs this massive, gritty piece of art.
The astronaut?
Yes, it depicts an astronaut in a heavily weathered spacesuit standing amidst the rubble of a ruined city. And the text overlaid on the art reads, "We left this earth together." It is this jarring, beautiful collision of a cozy, quiet, domestic evening and the massive, traumatic, cosmic themes of their reality.
The visual dissonance forces the viewer to reconcile the epic with the intimate. And the final image.
The third image is the music studio. The room is saturated in this intense, almost toxic neon green light. You can see a desk crowded with professional studio monitors, a computer display showing a serene coral reef, a heavy-duty stand loaded with synthesizers, and these sleek geometric light panels mounted on the wall.
And above the entire setup is a massive panoramic movie poster for Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yeah. But the detail that completely breaks me is out in the hallway. If you look past the neon green of the studio through the open doorway, the hall is bathed in this warm, normal yellow light. And sitting right there, just looking into the room, is a Rottweiler.
Just a dog, waiting patiently for its owner to finish making music.
I can anticipate the analytical friction this imagery might cause for a listener, because I have to be honest, I initially wanted to push back against these visuals.
Why is that?
Well, for a project titled The Day We Left Earth, a story fundamentally about the next evolutionary leap of humanity, about uploading neural pathways into a digital continuum to escape global collapse, there are an awful lot of cats, dogs, and ratty stuffed animals.
It feels almost aggressively ordinary.
Yeah. Why on earth would you focus on a worn-out stuffed bear or a coffee table book about whiskey when you are supposedly exploring the pinnacle of transhumanist existence?
Because that apparent contradiction is the absolute genius of the Fortin methodology. It is a vital philosophical correction to how we usually imagine the future.
Tell me more about that.
The macro elements, the sprawling cryoships, the advanced artificial intelligence, the complex neural uploading protocols, the death of the planet, every single piece of that monumental technology is entirely worthless without the micro elements.
What are we actually saving?
Exactly. Ask yourself, what exactly are you attempting to save? If you only digitize a brain's capacity to solve complex mathematics or process logic, you haven't saved a human being. You've just built a calculator.
That makes total sense.
The micro details, the specific placement of a ceramic Christmas village, the ritual of drinking coffee on the back porch, the faded ticket stub from a 90s rock concert, the tactile memory of a stuffed bear, the patient gaze of a dog waiting in a hallway. These are not trivial distractions from the science fiction.
There are the data points.
Yes. These mundane, highly specific details are the literal data points that constitute the architecture of a shared life. To put it in building terms, a scan of your neural pathways is just a pile of bricks. The memories of your cat and your morning coffee are the mortar. Without the mortar, the bricks collapse. There is no consciousness worth preserving without the ordinary details.
The mundane memories are the mortar. I love that. And to truly comprehend how all these disparate elements, the 90s acoustic music, the modern AI algorithms, the stuffed animals, the crushing grief over Jade, the enduring love story with Sarah, how they all mechanically interlock, we must look at the literal structural blueprint Justin drafted for this universe.
The Fortin system map.
Yes. Our source stack includes an incredibly complex diagram simply titled the Fortin System Map.
The map acts as the Rosetta Stone for translating the entire philosophy of the project. Aesthetically, it's exactly what you would anticipate from a high-level sci-fi user interface. It features a dark background, heavily illuminated by intricate, glowing green and gold geometric pathways,
Data nodes, circuitry lines.
all radiating outward from a central, brilliantly glowing digital brain.
If you just glanced at it from across the room, it looks like a schematic pulled straight out of the Matrix.
Precisely. It communicates high technology. But the revelation occurs when you magnify the image and actually read the text, labeling these complex technological nodes. The terminology is profoundly human.
Let's decode the architecture of this map. On the left hemisphere, you have a massive cluster labeled the Memory Archive. The subtext beneath it reads, "The past, what made us."
And the individual data nodes inside this archive, they aren't labeled with alphanumeric file codes or petabyte capacities.
No, one node is explicitly labeled Tuscany Street, first home, first memories. Right next to it is a node designated Saturday morning cartoons, wonder, imagination, simple joy.
Another primary node is family anchors. Jade, Randy, love that, built who we are.
Then you trace the circuitry across to the right hemisphere, designated as the connection layer. This is the active network bridge. It prominently features the dual consciousness bridge, which facilitates the real-time link between Justin and Sarah.
But the most critical component, the central router that governs the entire network, is labeled signal recognition, love.
Love isn't framed as an emotion. It is framed as an operating system protocol, a recognized signal.
And if you follow the lines down to the base, to the energy systems, you ask, what massive power source runs this infinite digital afterlife? It's a solar array network. With the subtext, the star is our source.
But nestled right in the very center, directly beneath the glowing brain, is a cluster called the human elements. These are the core variables that define the simulation. And what are those variables? There is a node for laughter, a node for curiosity, a node for hope.
And right beside them, treated with the exact same level of systemic importance, is a node for milk and graham crackers.
It is the perfect, seamless synthesis of the macro technology and the micro humanity. But the definitive statement of the entire work is not found in the nodes. It is the text curving in an arch directly over the central glowing brain. So what does this all mean?
I know exactly what you're going to say. The text reads, "We did not leave Earth. We translated it."
We translated it. That single powerful phrase resolves the core tension of our entire deep dive today. This 30-year project was never about escaping a doomed planet.
It was never about conquering the biological reality of death through cold, sterile machinery.
It was an exhaustive, deeply passionate attempt to preserve human signal integrity. It was about discovering a new vocabulary, a digital translation, for the incredibly fragile, beautiful things that make us human, ensuring they do not get lost in the dark expanse of time.
When you take a step back and survey the full scope of this, 30 years of relentless work, the acoustic guitars, the neural networks, the AI voice cloning, the devastating medical realities, the intricate maps, Justin Fortin constructed a massive, complex science fiction universe for one singular, beautifully simple reason.
To prove a point.
He built it all just to prove that his sister, his wife, and the profoundly ordinary details of his quiet life were spectacular enough to warrant an echo in eternity.
It stands as a monolithic monument to the ordinary. And to distill all of this into one final anchoring thought, I continually return to the closing lyric of JD's chapter, which effectively serves as the philosophical mission statement for the entire Fortin project.
What is that lyric?
The lyric is, "If love could have saved you, you'd live forever. But love did this instead. It made you forever." When you look at the Fortin system map, it proves that within the reality of this fiction, the technology isn't merely powered by solar arrays and processed by algorithms. The fundamental architecture of the system itself is constructed out of love.
It made you forever. What an absolutely incredible journey this has been. We started with a young F-15 crew chief strumming a guitar on a military base in Germany in the 90s, recording his thoughts onto degrading cassette tapes.
We watched him harness the absolute bleeding edge of artificial intelligence decades later to resurrect those melodies and the voices of the family he lost.
We navigated a gripping, tension-filled sci-fi saga of authoritarian crackdowns, underground bunkers, and digitized minds, only to uncover that the massive spaceship was just an elaborate metaphor for the friction of marriage.
And the sprawling digital afterlife was simply a canvas designed to honor a lost sister and the quiet beauty of a shared life.
Justin explicitly states in his director's notes that his ultimate goal was never to accurately predict the technological future. His goal was to obsessively preserve the present.
He writes that if someone manages to unearth this project 1,000 years from now, long after human biology has either failed or evolved across the stars, he hopes they will understand one thing.
He hopes they will know that before we mastered the engineering to conquer space, we first had to learn how to preserve the fragile pieces of ourselves inside of stories. Ultimately, he just wants the future to know that two people loved each other.
And that profound realization brings us right back to you listening to this right now. Justin utilized music, advanced artificial intelligence, and incredibly detailed world building to construct his Fortin system as a fortress to preserve his family.
But take a hard look at your own daily life. Think about every mundane text message you send to your partner.
Think about every seemingly insignificant photo of your pet that you back up to a cloud server. Think about every hyper-specific inside joke you drop into a group chat with your closest friends.
It poses a deeply personal question that we all must answer. What if you are already, right now, at this very second, actively building the architecture of your own shared consciousness?
What if you are laying down the bricks and the mortar, piece by piece, data point by data point, without even realizing the monument you were constructing?
What will your map look like when you leave Earth?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. It has been an absolute privilege to unpack the complexities of this universe with you. Until next time, take a long, deliberate look at the digital footprints you're leaving behind today. They might just be the architecture of your forever.